They asked and we answered. Here are the F1 Fantasy Community Survey results. What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position. It is Monday, December 23rd. My name is Ewan. On today's episode, we're going to go over the F1 Fantasy Community Survey results. The FanAm community, the F1 Fantasy community, content creators put out a call to action for you guys to answer a survey over the final 3 weeks of the season, and you guys responded in bucket loads. So today we're going to go over those survey results and see what y'all said. A little bit of housekeeping off the top is this is the final episode of 2024. I think I've said that for the last 2 episodes, but this is really it. I am actually going to leave you alone for the rest of the calendar year. So thank you for the season of growth that you guys have supported here on F1 Fantasy Pole Position. Couldn't do it without you guys. Every like, support, view, comment, interaction on X, TikTok, all that stuff. So thank you. Hope you guys have a happy holidays and a safe new year. And I will see you guys in 2025 after today's episode is over. But let's get into it here. Enough sappiness from my end here. Let's check out the community survey results. So looks like it's mostly men from under 35 that are responding to the survey, which is fine, but 10% female. So that's really encouraging to see the female base in the game growing. I know more and more interactions on X for me this season were from females, and it was really encouraging to see them joining the game. And like, honestly, a couple of them were phenomenal strategists this season. So great job by that. Even in the content creators league, we had F1 Fantasy Gal. So shout out to her. She came second right behind Zach F1. So great job by her. North America and Europe were mainly where the game was played. Canada, 12% out of the respondents here. India, 4%, Norway, 3%, Central and South America, 2%, Africa, 5%, Asia Pacific, 11%. Maybe that will grow a little bit going into 2025 with a lot more of an international feel around the circuit. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what these results look like next year. But yeah, 89% male, 10% female. And then most of the respondents here are about 25 to 45-ish in the game, which kind of tracks. I am 33, so I'm pretty much bang smack in the middle there playing F1 Fantasy. More than half of the respondents only play F1 Fantasy. So F1 only 53%. So we got some real dedicated F1 fans just playing their sports fantasy game. F1 Fantasy and other fantasy sports, 46%. That's the bucket I fall into. Let's see. F1 Fantasy, NFL, baseball, EPL. Anytime there's an international soccer tournament, I'm playing that as well. In the past, I've played basketball, I've played hockey. I'm currently bang smack in the middle of fantasy darts for the first time. That's pretty entertaining. So yeah, I am definitely in that other bucket. I will play any fantasy sport that you invite me to. So if you have another fantasy game, yeah, I'm in. You can count me in. So just hit me up with that invite. And then 1% other only. I'm not entirely sure how you guys found this survey, but thank you for responding to it. But yeah, it's pretty half and half there. So interesting to see that there is just like some solely dedicated F1 fantasy managers just to the F1 fantasy game there. Respondents are experienced having played through multiple iterations of F1 fantasy with skill and frequency. So yeah, this is like if you've played the last 2 seasons, you've only played under the F1 fantasy game that's been controlled by F1 like in-house. However, if you played more than that, you have kind of transitioned over from the play-on days where there were streaks, there were constant price rises, very similar to Fantasy Premier League, how they do it as well. There were beat teammate points, all that stuff. So you've seen the game evolve over the last 3 seasons. So 39% of the respondents were 3 to 4 years of playing, 9% 5+ years, 27% 2 years. So a quarter or more than half have joined in the last 2 years, which shows that the game is growing. And most of you guys that responded are very skilled because you are all mostly in the top 100K this season. And then how often do you guys check your fantasy team? Every race, which yeah, that's probably low for me. I feel like I'm checking mine like after every session, even though no points are scored. That maybe says more about me, but yeah, it's great to see that you guys are committed. You've been playing for a few years now, and that you are constantly checking your team, that you're an engaged manager, which would make sense if you are responding to a community survey for the final 3 races of the F1 fantasy season. So great job by y'all there. Competing with friends is the greatest incentive for new players. That is true. Trash talk is #1 reason to play fantasy sports with your friends. There are some people that go for like the global rank, the overall rank. It was really fun playing or creating and playing the Content Creators League this season. We'll definitely be doing that again. Maybe we'll kind of put the results out more often than we were. But yeah, it was really fun getting together with Rob, Adam, Terry, Pop Pan Man, Zach, Rain, F1 Fantasy Tools, F1 Fantasy Tips, all those fun guys. So really fun to do that. The bragging rights go to Zach this year in the Content Creators League. So great job by him. They do make race weekends more fun. It's just kind of you start to like kind of become more of a diehard F1 fan when you have Yuki Tsunoda or Zhou Guanyu battling for 17th, and you're like cheering on a 56th lap overtake for Zhou Guanyu over Liam Lawson and stuff like that. And it's definitely made me more of a diehard fan as well, because now I am tuning into all the practice sessions, all the qualifying. I'm watching the Thursday media wrap-ups. I'm watching the post-Friday practice session interviews to kind of get any hints of like how the drivers are feeling going into the weekend. So really having the F1 fantasy team has increased my engagement with F1. Let me know in the comments below if that has happened to you, or if you've just like always been a diehard fan and it's just kind of like been a little bit of a side project for you in F1 as well. But 4% chance to win official prizes. That, I mean, there's not a ton of prizes out there. So yeah, that was interesting. 4% to interact with the F1 fantasy community, or the F1 community, which is interesting, and 1% for other reasons. Yeah, so yeah, trash talking your friends is the greatest incentive for new players and to make race weekends more fun, which I definitely agree with, because yeah, like I said, I'm just way more engaged with F1 during a race weekend rather than just being like, oh yeah, it's Monza this weekend, I'll tune in on Sunday afternoon. Like I am kind of like watching practice sessions and qualifying sessions and everything all on my phone through Friday and Saturday before the big finale on the weekend on Sundays for the Grand Prix. Scoring changes and easier access to leagues had a very positive impact on user experience. Yeah, that's kind of grew throughout the season. F1 Fantasy did a pretty good job towards the end of the season, really like listening to kind of community feedback, the what would I say, the kind of complaints on X and all those platforms about like the live scoring, like lack of live scoring. Like, yeah, for most of the season there, I was not going to like the F1 game. I was going to F1 Fantasy Tools to find the live scoring, signed up for the Patreon to get that live scoring. So the closer the F1 can get to that, it doesn't even have to be like exact. It just has to kind of show us a little bit. Like in FPL, Fantasy Premier League, you've got your scores. Like you've got when someone scores a goal, when someone assists, when someone keeps a clean sheet, when someone gets a yellow card, it's like pretty instantly updated. And that's always nice to check and see, and just like even have like a baseline score of like, oh, I'm having an okay game week. But with F1 Fantasy, when there was no live scoring, it was like F1 Fantasy Tools is saying this, but what is it going to say on the actual game when the score is finalized and stuff? So even like getting close, it doesn't have to be exact with the overtakes, the positions gained, that kind of thing. Like if we can just get a baseline of like, I think I'm having a pretty good week, then that would be great. No negative chip changes was positive, because that was not just for the whole weekend. It was actually per session. So that made it a more powerful chip. Pinning favorite leagues you guys liked, and the transfer penalty going up was something you guys liked as well. Pinning the favorite leagues could still use some work because you still actually have to navigate to the pinned league section on the app, which is not the most user-friendly fantasy app I've ever played with. But yeah, the transfer penalty, it was -4 in 2023. It went up to -10 this year. So it really did like make you think, like, am I going to take a hit? Because -4, that's the penalty in FPL, and like it does discourage you a little bit, but considering how many points people were scoring in F1 Fantasy, taking a -4 to kind of get your ideal lineup for the weekend was not that big of a hit. So -10 points was definitely good. And I think it really increased the strategy of like, man, that's pretty tough to go from like Valtteri Bottas to like a Pierre Gasly for a -10. It's like, is Gasly going to outscore Bottas by 10 points? Maybe not. If he had done it in 2023, 4 points, probably would have said yes. So that definitely increased the strategy. So that was a good aspect, according to y'all. Going over to things that we didn't like as much, further changes need to improve the value of the competitive offer, particularly head-to-head battle mode. Yeah, I tried this out a little bit. I did not keep track of it at all. But the comment here is head-to-head mode should be like FPL when we face a different rival each week and gain 3 points for beating them. This would be fantastic. I would love this in the mini leagues, in the content creator league that we've been putting together here. Like if we could all just play each other 3 point, even just like 2 points for a win, like whatever. And just keep track of like head to head. You have the overall rankings that we can all kind of talk about on our YouTube channels, post on Twitter, that kind of thing. And but then like having the kind of overall like who's had the best head to head season, maybe like a playoff thing at the end of the year would be fantastic. Featured leagues. Some of the mini leagues should be announced way in advance. Agree with that. Yeah, usually they were only coming out like the week before. Like with the Vegas race, we had about a 3-week break between the second to last triple header of the season and then the last triple header of the season, where it was Vegas, Qatar, Abu Dhabi. And I think it was only like that week that it was announced, but you really could have had 3 weeks. You could have really hyped it up on like your socials. You could have had the content creators kind of touting it a little bit as well. So definitely something to improve there. Also, maybe just more mini leagues, or like introduce a tiebreaker somehow. Like in China, I think it was, they were saying on the Fantasy Formula during when they were talking about these results that Adam finished first, but he was tied with 300 other people, 3,000 other people. I can't even remember. And they just had to do like a drawing. So maybe we can make the prizes a little bit better, like we're talking about there. And yeah, so in general, there are some improvements that can be made to the game. And I agree with the respondents here. With scoring speed being addressed, focus efforts on game UI, UX, and player support, enriching provisional scores, adding live scoring, which they did towards the end of the season. So great job by them. Hopefully that can improve and keep up for the 2025 season. User interface and experience. People said that they want to see the game improve game performance, improving the game UI and navigation, increased transparency around activating and deactivating drivers, and creating a dedicated F1 fantasy port for questions. That would be handy. I think most people, when they had questions, were just kind of spamming the F1 chat support chat. And yeah, sometimes it did work, but it was a little annoying to even have to do that a little bit. The increasing transparency around activating and deactivating drivers. This kind of seemed like a outlier season with how many drivers were moving around. We had the illnesses, we had race bans, all that stuff. So the game did have a little bit of a harder time than I think it usually would with that sort of stuff. But yeah, we had the Logan Sargent debacle where like you could still have him, but not score any points. And then they introduced the penalties after that. So it is hard on the back end to introduce stuff like this mid-season, but hopefully now that they've gone through the ringer of it for 2024, that they'll be a lot more open about it heading into the 2025 season. Should we have like a Jack Doohan or an Isaac Hadjar kind of just drop out of their teams early on in the season, with if the performances aren't up to scratch, then like hopefully we'll kind of get that going in there. Also, the Ollie Behrman thing where he was 14 million in Ferrari, then he came back in a Haas, and then he was a different price. Yeah, just like it was just a little tough for the game this season as well. Improving the game UI and navigation, definitely agree. It was like, okay, that's my score. Okay, I got to go to my league. Okay, is the overall ranking a public league, a starter league, a private league? Like, I think I was still kind of guessing it towards the end of the season as well, despite doing it 22, 23, 24 times throughout the season, trying to figure out where my overall rank was in the season. And improving game performance, there would be a couple of times where you'd have to have your driver in before you could add the constructor, or we didn't let you add the constructor because you had the exact price. So then you had to add the constructor, then add the driver back in. There were just like these little nitpicks going on throughout the game. So hopefully those kind of little bugs, which were just a little inconvenient, will be fixed heading into the 2025 season. Heading into the last two slides here. Focus next gameplay changes on scoring and pricing optimizations to reward skill. As you guys know, decreasing the DNF disqualification penalties, removing or reducing driver day, introducing performance-based scoring, and providing details on pricing model. Yeah, pretty much if you weren't embedded or deep in the F1 fans community, you still would not know how the pricing model changes. It had to take some detective work from the F1 Fantasy Tools Discord to even get that going there. If you have been playing for more than 2 seasons, you will remember the streaks that Play On used to do, which were pretty fun, which was if you got into Q3 5 races in a row, you'd get like a bonus points. If you finish in the top 10 in 5 races in a row, you'd get some bonus points as then. So that would really increase the strategy. And Sergio Perez is awful, but he's finished in the top 10 5 weeks in a row. Like, maybe he could be an option that's cheaper. So that could have been something that we were thinking about towards the end of the season, where there were certain times where it was a really limited driver pool, because it was just kind of like get triple McLaren or get triple Ferrari kind of thing. But if Russell or Hamilton, if Leclerc, in Abu Dhabi, or I'm trying to think when he had a bad qualifying, maybe Canada, he could have reset there, and he would have maybe in 5 races time been a better option than the Papaya, because he would have had a 5 race streak going on. So just these little things that kind of made the game a little bit more rewarding for managers who were more engaged, where if you kind of just had a set and forget team, you could kind of keep up with teams even if you missed a couple of weeks. So adding more points for people who are more engaged and checking their teams more often is a great way to maintain your fan base and your users of the game. Removing or reducing driver of the day, definitely agree. I mean, 10 points is a lot. I don't mind if it gets all the way out, but if it does stay in the game, it has to kind of move down to 5-ish points, just be a bonus, maybe even 2 points, just not that much of a difference, because it really was quite swingy at times. Think about Lando in Austria, where he didn't even finish the race, but still won driver of the day. And yes, decreasing the did not finish DSQ penalties. In an ideal world, I would love to see the DNF penalties kind of almost graded by where they were in the race. So right now I think it's 95% of the race you have to finish to not get a DNF. But I'd love to see that kind of graded. So maybe it is a -20 if you crash out in the first 15 laps or that kind of thing. And then it's a -10 if you crash more than halfway through. Just it feels really harsh, and it needs to be changed for a sprint compared to a Grand Prix, because if you can get 25 points for winning a Grand Prix, then the DNF at 20, I don't hate it there. But with the sprint, if you can only get 8 points for winning a sprint and you can get -20 for a DNF, it should really just be -10 for a sprint, maybe -20 for the Grand Prix. And then Terry made a great point on the fantasy formula as well, that the disqualification means that you've done something wrong, illegal. You've tried to manipulate the the racing rules. So that can stay at -25. I don't really mind that either. So that was a great point by Terry. But yeah, for DNF, it'd be kind of cool to see it like graded almost throughout the course of the race. Or maybe if it's like, it's kind of getting too in the weeds, obviously, but like if your driver gets crashed into, they get a -5. If your driver caused the collision that got himself out, maybe he gets a -20. But then you're leaving up to the stewards, and the stewards already ruin our Sundays a lot, just as F1 fans in general. So maybe we don't want to leave our F1 fantasy teams up to them either. But yeah, let me know what you think about the idea of kind of just like grading the DNFs almost just like throughout the race. Maybe it's like -20, -19, like every like 5 laps, you kind of go down a point in DNFs. Maybe that would lessen the sting a little bit there. Just something to think about. But yeah, removing or reducing drive of the day for sure. Introduce performance base, and then bring back the beat teammate points, because then it's like, you definitely want people from different teams. Like you don't just want to do like the triple back marker that I was stuck in this season with Zhou Guanyu, Valtteri Bottas, and Franco Colapinto / Logan Sargent towards the end of the season there. Because then you're kind of like, well, I do want Pierre Gasly. I think he's going to be Esteban Ocon this weekend. That kind of stuff there as well. And then of these surveyed, I think it was over 600 people responded to the survey. Fantasy Premier League and NFL fantasy are the most popular non-fantasy games. And I would definitely agree there. 39% said non-motorsports, which would be FPL, NFL. 5% said unofficial F1, which was like grid rivals stuff. And then other motorsports like MotoGP fantasy. So hat tip to those. So yeah, 47% of respondents play something other than F1 fantasy. And like I said, I'm all over the map when it comes to fantasy games. Baseball, NFL, Premier League, international soccer tournaments, baseball, basketball, football. I'm in darts right now. Yeah, it's a wild time in my head. T's and P's to my wife, because I'm always kind of up and down about some fantasy game in the world there. But yeah, that was all the community results. Let me know what you guys think, what surprised you, what didn't surprise you, what kind of changes you agree with, what you kind of thought about my thoughts about the survey as well. But yeah, hit me up in the comments or follow me on X, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all those fun spots at F1 Fantasy Ewan. And like I said, this is the last episode of 2025. So enjoy the next couple of weeks off for the holiday season. I will be kind of rebooting the channel, kind of trying to get it looking a little bit cleaner for 2025. Hopefully another season of growth over here. But yeah, thank you so much for all the support, all the views, likes, comments, all that fun stuff. But like I said, happy holidays, have a safe time, enjoy a little bit of a break from F1, even though there's been some breaking news, all the driver changes, stuff like that. But we will talk about that in the preseason, let it all kind of shake out. But once again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Happy holidays. See you in 2025, and I will talk to you next time.